The chances of beating Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible at the box office this summer were 1,000,000 to 1, but movie director Alejandro Monteverde has done the impossible. The 46-year-old Mexican-American's film about child trafficking has smashed expectations. Sound of Freedom starring Jim Caviezel was made for just $14 million, but is now on track to rake in $200 million. Monteverde made the film to raise awareness of child sex abuse and trafficking, but the movie with great intentions was met with hostility by many in the mainstream media who called it alarmist. Nexus presenter Matthew Moore went to meet Monteverde the morning after a special screening in London.
Alejandro Monteverde, welcome to Nexus on TRT World. You are basically enjoying probably the highest point of your career right now, because you've had this massive success with Sound of Freedom. How has it been for you the last couple of months since it launched on, what, July the 4th?
It's been very surreal. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out if this is real. You know, I wake up every morning and be like, okay, this is happening. You know, to have a film, an independent film, to come out on July 4 against all these franchises. I was just hoping that the movie would make like $10 million. Mm-hmm. So we came out at the same time as Indiana Jones, and we were able to survive it, and then not just survive it, surpass it. Mm-hmm. And then we were thinking, well, Mission Impossible is gonna say, okay, so this was enough, go home. And we were on par with it, and now I think we just passed it. So it's just been an incredible, incredible journey. But what excites me the most, it's the audience. The audience that came out, and they are the ones that became the ones to spread the word. And I always said, you know, we were competing with all these films that had millions of dollars, I mean millions, hundreds of millions, to create all these massive billboards and massive marketing campaigns. And here we are, and our billboards were the audience. They were the walking billboards. They were the ones telling people, you must see this film. And I have a very funny story because, you know, I like to travel a lot and I get to meet a lot of people. And I think when I got married, here you can only have one last name, right? Yeah. So I had to lose one last name. And I met a lot of people with my former last name. So long story short, I got a text from one of my friends I haven't seen in years, and it says, you must see Sound of Freedom. And I'm like, wow, this guy doesn't know I made it. Yeah. And that's when I realized the word of mouth had just exploded.
Yeah. Well, I understand that you are not just the director, but you're also the writer. Yeah. And there was a point in your life when you were watching television, you said, I've got to do something about this child trafficking, you know, crime and problem. Yeah. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it was definitely a calling that I could not shut down. I tried, you know, I tried to talk myself out of it. And I knew I could not do this alone, so I called my co-writer, Rod Barr, and he also in the beginning was like, are you sure we want to do this? I felt that I had to do this. And when I presented it to the rest of the team, I heard what the challenges that the film actually went through. It's like, it's gonna be really hard to market these. Who wants to see a film about child trafficking? And at that time was a taboo. Nobody was even talking about it. But the calling was greater than the fears and the challenges and the concerns that we dove in. We decided to start writing about it. And in the beginning, we started writing fiction. And it was not 3 months into it that I got a call from Eduardo, the producer of the film, and say, I want you to meet Tim Ballard. And for me, meeting Tim Ballard was more of an investigation, you know, investigative, like more like a journalistic approach.
Trying to work out if he was the real deal, I guess.
Well, no, I wanted to get more information about the subject matter because he was an expert. Yes. He was a former agent, federal agent working on crimes against children. So the first time I met him was to get more information about the subject matter because I was writing a fiction. And then when I met him, I realized his life surpassed my fiction. And long story short, I started writing about the story of Tim Ballard, which is an origin story.
Yeah.
It's just when he left the government and went on his first mission to Colombia and rescued 54 children.
So you made the film for what, like 11, 14 million?
Yeah, well, they never tell me. I always feel like I made the movie for 3, because I'm always short on money.
Yeah.
It's like,
but you
where
made
is
it
the
work.
money?
It was a small budget, but you made it work.
I think the budget was
something like 14.
Yeah, I think it's public. I think it's 14.
And today, the newspapers are reporting that it's made something like 173 million, and it goes on to say
178.
178 every single day.
178. I just checked. I was actually checking coming down, and
oh, were you?
You know, we're still in 2,000 theaters, so
Yeah.
you know, I think we're going to get very close to 200.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Yeah, so you're beating Mission Impossible and all those guys. Look, money is not the reason why you made it, but it is important that it was a commercial success because it gives you and Angel Studios the clout to go on to keep making movies that help people.
Yeah.
So this success came in adverse conditions.
Yeah.
Because the mainstream media were beating this film down relentlessly.
Yeah.
Would you mind if we talked about some of the controversial remarks that these journalists have made?
Please.
So they said in their headlines on various newspapers that it was a movie for dads with brainworms, that it was QAnon adjacent, that it was alarmist and exaggerating. We've dealt with it on our program. We've talked about the numbers of children who are suffering. Yeah. And that there is no alarm great enough, frankly, to meet that. Yeah. Let's hear from you. What do you have to say to all these people who are writing these awful headlines?
You know, they hurt, because like if somebody throws you a rock, obviously it's gonna hurt. But at the same time, I realized that if we survive these attacks, some of them were ridiculous. Like anything that is conspiracy, I just left it as a conspiracy. It's like, really? It's like if somebody says, you know, the Martians funded your film, I will take it as what it is. It's ridiculous. So, but what it hurt the most is that it was so ridiculous, and it was I was taken aback when other media picked it up. And I was like, wow, that I was just very curious when I started doing interviews, because in the beginning, it was so ridiculous that I didn't want to be part of it. I'm like, you know what? I'm in a poetic way, I'm going to go hide. I took my distance. I'm not going to give interviews. I don't want to be part of something that is so absurd. But eventually, you know, the people that made the movie started calling me and say, hey, I think you should go and speak for us. You know, for the artists that make this movie. We made this with the purity of heart to try to create awareness on this. So that's when I decided, I think it's only been like 2 weeks since I started giving interviews. And I was just like, well, if around 20 million people have seen this film, well, this conspiracy group, can you tell me how big they are? And like how organized they are? Because are they 20 million people, or like, really? And then they did, I think it's public. I don't know, I don't want to misquote, but it was one of the mainstream media who did a poll, because they were very curious who was watching the movie, and the poll was amazing. Yeah. It was 30-something% was Hispanic. Yeah. There was like 28 or something % were Democrats, and the other percent was the rest. It was like, wow. Yeah. So where is
and there were more women than men.
Women.
So it wasn't dads with brainworms. Yeah. You know, these a variety of people, very varied demographic. Now,
and another accusation was that these conspiracy groups funded the film. Yeah. And that's when they, you know, that's when I realized these guys have not seen the film.
Well, that's just defamation.
If they have seen the film, you will see the investors, and the investors are not normal investors. It's like if in the 1900s, you see the name Rockefeller. It's like, this is this level of investors. I mean, you look at their names and you just put +2.
The small group that you're referring to, are you saying that there were allegations that QAnon was funding it?
I saw one of the articles.
There were allegations. Let's deal with that. Let's deal with that while we can.
I don't even remember the names of the conspiracy, because I put it in the same category as the Martians.
Okay.
Conspiracy.
Right. Now, you started writing The Sound of Freedom in 2015.
Yeah.
And that was...
No Sound of Freedom. I was writing in 2015, I was writing a fiction.
Okay.
Sound of Freedom, I started in 2016.
Okay, but still, that was before QAnon was ever formed. By 1 year, I can tell you. All right.
Okay. Thank you for educating me, because I'm not familiar with any of that.
So even that, I got this from a recent Guardian article. So they've admitted that you were writing it before QAnon was even formed.
Yeah.
But their headline is something along these lines, right? The Sound of Freedom director says, Jim Caviezel's QAnon comments hurt my work. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this film, Jim Caviezel, of course, is the lead actor. And he has attended some QAnon events, and he has made some remarks about adrenochrome. Adrenochrome being one of the, inverted commas, conspiracy theories that he's linked to. But this movie has no mention of that whatsoever. And as we say, you started writing it before QAnon was even a thing. So let me ask you about this headline. Inevitably, we need to hear from you about what you mean by Jim Caviezel's QAnon comments have hurt your work. What does that mean?
Well, you know, for me, as a filmmaker, when I make a movie, I hire and, you know, one of the big part of directing a film is casting. So you cast not just one actor, sometimes you cast 300 actors. You hire not one person, sometimes you hire 500-600 people, right? Not directly, but you know, when you go to see a movie, you have thousands of people being part of the film. They all have one blueprint, which is the script, and is what it comes from the heart, what in this case, I wrote with my co-writer. When you make a film, you finish it, you edit it. Now, what the thousands of people that work on the film go and do after the movie is finished, and they voice whatever their personal beliefs are, I not only can't control it, I don't want to control it. Because if I actually could control it, that will make me a dictatorship. Yes. I don't want that. I want people to go and speak whatever it is that they believe after they finish the film, you know. But if they're trying to rewrite my script, then obviously that's not allowed, right? So unless it's going to elevate the story, but not to put anybody's personal political views on our movie, right? So whatever people, and I will not just, you know, mention one particular actor, because working with Jim for me was a pleasure. He was nothing but the most professional actor I've ever worked with. You know, I can tell you one of the stories. You know, one day he was literally so sick that she should be in a hospital. So sick that we actually had to go and ask the manager of the hotel to open the door, because he was not opening the door, and we found him and he was in the bed just like passed out. And they were like, we have to take him to the hospital. And I said, well, let me talk to him. And I said, hey, Jim, if we don't shoot this scene, I'm gonna lose the location. If I lose the location, you know, we don't have a movie. And he says, let's shoot. So you know the scene when he comes out with the bucket?
Comes out with the bucket?
Yeah. And he's like acting like, you know, he's hangover. I had to rewrite the entire scene. He was genuinely sick, and the bucket he was throwing up during the shooting. And that throwing up was because we rewrote it as if he was hangover. And he was only able to give me one take, and then he will go on the bed, and then there was a bathroom in there, and they were literally doctors just trying to. So for an actor to do that, the conviction that he had on this film was beyond of a dream of what whatever director would ever want. Now, when I casted this film, I had already offered the film to many other actors before, who for whatever reason passed on the film. And for me, I wasn't thinking of Jim Caviezel, not because he was not right for the part. It's because I'm a visual director. I wanted, you know, Tim Ballard is blonde with blue eyes. Jim Caviezel, I only realized he had blue eyes when we dyed his hair blonde. You know, when I met him, he had a long hair black and a beard. So when we started discussing the project, I realized that this film was very close to his heart. He had adopted 3 of his children. He knew this subject matter very, very close. He actually knew this theme more than I did. And when you're working with an actor that knows the movie more than you do at a personal level, that's gold. So the next day I asked him if I could dye his hair blonde, and he said yes. When I put him next to Tim Ballard, then I was like, bingo.
Yeah.
So I am very excited for the work that he did. Now, what he does after the film, we're in America, it's his freedom. Now, did it hurt the film? You know, I would say it made the film very controversial, and I wish that the film didn't become that controversial. But looking always into the upside, you know, you can always look at things and judge at things in retrospective. You can never judge them as if they're happening.
Absolutely.
And looking at it into retrospective, you know, the timing of the film coming out at that time was key. And yes, people politicized the film, which they shouldn't. Because if an actor, it's like if you own Apple and you have, I don't know, 5 million shareholders on Apple. And one of those guys goes and shares their political views. That should have never, their views should have never affected the product. So here, why did his political views have to do anything to brand the film in this way?
You have to
it
make
should
a
have been
separation.
separated.
Yeah, make a separation. I think you...
And they do that with other movies. I don't know why they did it with this one. In other movies, actors go crazy.
You can do... Listen, in mainstream Hollywood movies, if an actor takes a progressive or liberal point of view on something and is extremely vocal about it, it can only enhance their reputation and employment prospects. But if a man takes the contrary view or something controversial that's contrary to the mainstream, he will be persecuted for it, as we've seen. You may not agree with him as a director, but you're saying you're willing to let people have their private lives and express themselves,
100%.
As is the First Amendment. I
Which
believe
is
is
the
kind
most
of important.
valuable thing we have.
First Amendment. So now you have had the greatest success.
Now, unfortunately, in this case, it did hurt. It did hurt my voice as a director not because of what some people in the team decided to do, because the media put me in that box. When I always say politics divide. Anything that is political, I take my distance. Just because I am not a politician, my opinion means nothing. I'm a storyteller, and I always like to keep my distance away from anything that is political. And I like to make movies that create conversations and that unite, which is the opposite of the labels that they were putting into the film.
You've had some critical success in the past. I'd say so far you've made 5 movies, right? But before this 4. Right, okay. You've had some critical success in the past, and people can look you up and they'll see what you did in Toronto and so on. But you've only made 4 movies. Frankly, I don't think it's insulting to say I haven't heard of you or your movies before this.
Yeah.
You're now in the big league, having made a movie that could reach 200 million, is expected to.
Yeah.
So you're going to move into another league now. Will you still have the same feeling towards your actors, that they should be afforded the liberty to say what they want, off-set, not related to the film? Are you still going to be in favor of free speech in that way?
100%. I mean, my new movie, it's my best work. It's about social justice, and it's about the power, the true power of a woman. A woman that came as an immigrant. It's about immigration. A woman that came to America with nothing and revolutionized New York, and it created an empire as big as the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, but it's an empire of hope. All the resources she was giving away. I mean,
an empire of charity, if you like.
But she had to fight. It's an action film at the highest level. And the actress, the lead actress, she has her own views that may differ from the character that she played. So this may actually go in the opposite direction. And it may go like literally Sound of Freedom went in that. The other movie may go. I don't know where it's going to go, but I don't want to control her. I am a big believer the people should be able to voice their opinions. And I do think that we should also, as a society, discuss what we agree first. So we can then have enough trust that we can now talk on what we disagree. I think disagreement is the best thing that a society can have. Because if we all agree on the same thing, all the things, then we become like, you know, machines.
Absolutely. But the thing is, Hollywood didn't want to have that discussion because, and I give you as evidence, the fact that you had the movie ready, what, in 2018, was it?
2019 is when it was
2018, 19. So you had the movie ready, and you originally went with Fox Columbia.
Yeah, it was Fox International.
Fox International. So that was bought by Disney.
Yeah, and
then your movie was shelved. They were not going to release it.
I think it was lost in the limbo.
Yeah. Why?
I think when you know, it's natural when this big, massive, you know, studios merge. You know, the little movies get lost.
People will say that Hollywood was trying to suppress it.
Yeah, I want to be more positive. I think it was not intentional. I think it was more like just the subject of the film was like, oh wow, this is a very hard movie to sell. And also then COVID kicked in and he's like, wow, who wants to see a movie about these? And so
depressing enough.
I don't think it was.
But how did you feel when they said, we're not going to release your movie? You'd made this movie, you
sad.
Worked so hard.
You know, sad, and I thought the movie was never going to see the light of the day. And then obviously I like to make cinema for the big screen, and I was like, okay, this is going to end up in streaming, and when it's on streaming, so I was so grateful when the Harmon brothers came in, and they're like, we not only want to distribute the film, we know exactly how. And they saw the potential, and they saw the need, because they, as a studio, they're very connected with the audiences. They're constantly driven by data, and they're constantly polling and asking people, what do the audience want? And they knew. They did a lot of testing before they acquired the film. And they saw the testing. And then they're like, okay, we know how to take this to them. And they did an incredible job. And now they're doing it worldwide. And I just came back from Colombia and from Argentina, and yesterday here, and I'm seeing the reactions, and I was like, okay. I'm curious how this is going to perform worldwide, where all these conspiracy accusations do not exist.
Your film has not only been criticized for the various conspiracy theory links or non-links, imaginary links, but it's also been criticized for, and you'd expect that with any movie, for the directing and for the dialogue and so on. You'd expect that, and you'd take that as constructive criticism or not, whatever. Do you feel you could have made the dialogue a bit better? Do you think it was predictable in places?
No, not at all. And I do think that, unfortunately, the critics have lost, not all of them, but some of them have lost their own voice. They come with a prejudice. Now they can fight that themselves. They become machines. Many critics have fallen prey into this tribal way of reviewing things. It's like, review the film for yourself. Do not read another review. Do not read this thing and come in with a mind that you're already going to be able to kind of not be able to break the prejudice. Let me just put you a perfect example. Imagine right now, I'm going to introduce you to somebody, and I go, you know, this person is this, is that, you know, he doesn't like this, he's blah, blah, blah. And I just tell you, and I put all of this thing. Before you meet him, you already have a whole preconception of who this person is. You're not going to be able to genuinely meet this person. I do feel a genuine critic should come to see the film from a very objective point of view, clean, and give their own perspective. And I don't think we're there anymore. And you know what? Me, I don't care anymore. I used to care, I used to read, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I did not read one single review, neither good or bad.
Your relationship
because
is
now
with the audience.
I really don't care. I don't care. And now that I saw the audience, I care about what the audience says, and I'm going to make movies for the audience, and that is who I make films for. And, you know, I respect everybody's jobs. I know the job of a critic is a job, but if it's good, it's going to inflate my ego. And if it's bad, it's going to depress me. So I don't want neither one. I don't want to inflate my ego, and I don't want to go down. So for me, it doesn't help me. It does not help me in any way to read the reviews.
Thank you so much, Alejandro Monteverde.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you.